Hello and welcome to the Beyond 6 Seconds podcast. I'm your host, Carolyn Keel, and on today's episode, I'm speaking with Swara Swami, an autistic music therapist who's worked with neurodivergent children and adults. She has her Bachelors in Music Therapy from Berklee College of Music and is currently doing her Master's in Expressive Arts Therapy, specializing in clinical mental health counseling at Lesley University. She's also a singer who's worked with several well-known Indian musical artists as part of the Berklee Indian Ensemble, where she also worked on a Grammy-nominated album. She is an autistic self-advocate who's very passionate about autism and mental health awareness. Swara, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm really happy to have you here. I've really enjoyed following your posts on Instagram. You talk a lot about advocacy and you share your performing and artistic expressions as well. So I'm excited to hear your story today. So I guess just starting out, how did you realize that you're autistic?
I always knew that I was different from everyone. I didn't speak until the age of 3. I could sing. I could only sing then. I lacked social and communication skills, and I used to stim a lot. I never realized that was stimming. I was just moving a lot, and then yeah. So I always realized, that I'm different from everyone. I knew I was neurodivergent, but I was not sure what it was exactly. So yeah.
So how did you find out? Do you wind up getting a diagnosis later in your life that kind of cleared up or made it clear that you're autistic?
Yeah, I got diagnosed at the age of 16. So I went through a series of misdiagnoses and possible diagnoses. And then at the age of 16, found out that I was autistic.
Mm-hmm. Did it surprise you to get that diagnosis of autism? I know you said you always kind of felt different, but I guess kind of finding out that you were autistic, what were your feelings around that when you first found out?
I wasn't really surprised. I felt relieved though. At least I know now that why I was different. And I have an identity now. So that was the feeling I had. So yeah, and even with my loved ones and all that, with my family, they knew that I wasn't a neurotypical, and it explained everything to all of us.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of, well, I guess people have different reactions when they get a diagnosis later in life, whether they're teenagers or adults. And, sometimes it is relief to have the answers, and, it's usually a whole mixture of feelings and such. So yeah, I'm glad it provided some answers, finding that out. So you basically spent most of your childhood growing up knowing that you were, different or neurodivergent in some way before you found out that you were autistic. So what was it like growing up as an autistic girl in India, either in school or at home?
Yeah, my school life was very difficult actually. So I wasn't understood and accepted by my peers, and even my teachers didn't understand me, and I wasn't getting any accommodations. And with home, there were some tensions because there were, like I said earlier, I went through a series of misdiagnoses and possible diagnoses, and none of us were sure why I wasn't like everyone. But my mom, she's no more now, and she went into this field for me, and I felt I got more understanding from her, and then later from all my other family members too.
Mm-hmm. And that's good. And I'm curious, how is autism or even neurodivergence in general, how is that viewed in India? Because I only really have a view of kind of how it's seen in the United States. So I'm just curious, how do people see it in India?
It is a huge stigma in India. I think it's they have a lack of understanding of neurodivergence and even mental health. I mean, people don't understand why a person is like that. People are not aware, this, there is something called neurodivergence. There are autistic people. That's something people just don't get it here, and it's it's a little. It's really we are kind of behind, I would say, but we're slowly getting there as well. So yeah, that's how it is in India.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that about, views of neurodivergence and mental health in general, because you now work in the mental health field, as a music therapist. So how did you choose music therapy as a profession?
So I went through a troubled childhood, and during that time, music helped me so much. And like I said earlier, I could sing even before I could speak. So music used to help me in connecting, communicating. It just made me who I am today. And I realized if music could help me, it could help so many other people like me. And my mom, like I said, she had gone into this field, and she was a special educator. She also had a PhD. And then she had her own center, like where she used to work with disabled children. And I used to volunteer there. And I realized how much I liked working with children. And it was fun. And I was studying at A.R. Rahman's college, KM Music Conservatory in Chennai. And people from Berklee had made a visit there, and I was like so impressed. And I found out like they had a Bachelors for Music Therapy program. I decided to make this my dream to attend there, and I found I found out that they had a transfer program in Malaysia. So I studied there for 2.5 years. Then I transferred to Berklee, where I did my major, and then like just continued from there.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So you've studied internationally, like, and you've actually traveled and studied in many different countries, including the United States and I think China as well. So,
Yeah.
like, what was that? What's that like as an autistic person? Because I mean, everyone's different, but some autistic people kind of find it hard to be out of the routine. Others really love to travel. Like, what was your experience living in other countries as an autistic person?
Yeah, it was challenging, like especially in China and Malaysia, it was very difficult. And as an autistic, definitely like adjusting was very hard. I remember like when I moved to China for the first time, everything was like alien to me, the people, the language, the accent, and I had to do so much to fit in. Had to even get an accent there. And in China, at least, like I was with my family, but my first year in Malaysia, I was on my own. I really struggled with cooking, doing chores, paying the rent. Everything was all new to me, and I've never. This was like I never had such an experience. I never like thought about this or had any idea. And then my family later moved to Malaysia for me because I was struggling with this a lot. I think life in the US was different though. I became like more independent and open there. There were a few tensions, but mostly I had a wonderful time there. And I think what I really appreciated there was like no matter all the tensions, you will always find your people there. You will always like find a place there, and you're never alone there. And I felt like I found my people there, and Boston is like my second home. And one thing I wanted to share is that I'm also like a believer of intersectionality. Like I feel like that's like very important. Like so, along with my autism, I also want to say that race played a part as well. So I faced racism in both China and Malaysia. I was also bullied heavily in China. So one thing people used to say, especially like in China, I heard this a lot. Like they said that they don't like Indians, but they like the other Indians because they're nice and cool, and they don't act like Indians. Something I used to hear there a lot. And sometimes I wondered, maybe if I didn't lack communication and social skills, I wouldn't have faced racism. That was something I used to think. But and then they would have considered me nice as well. I wouldn't have been so misunderstood. And now I'm like, no, like this thinking is just not right. I mean, this is discrimination, and since they also bullied me for being very different, yes. But in the US, like I didn't face anything like that. Like I said, I found my people there, and it could also be because I was in a bubble, and I've always lived in the same city for 5.5 years, and maybe because that's how I felt there. But US somewhere, because I found my people there, I started being open about my autism diagnosis there. Like that's the first time where I opened it because I felt I got the acceptance there.
Yeah, and I would imagine that, especially being in like music schools, whether students know it or not, I think there are a lot of neurodivergent people in performing arts and music as well. So yeah, I'm glad that you were able to find your people there. And yeah, as you're looking at intersectionality, it's hard to separate like, what is racism, what is ableism or discrimination because of, a neurotype. But as you said, it all comes together. So yeah, that's really interesting that you've had all of those experiences because you've just lived in so many different places. Do you get to still go back to Boston a lot? You mentioned that you're in India right now, but you still are going to school in Boston. So like part of a hybrid program?
Yeah, so it's a hybrid program. So every summer, like so July, I'll be going to Boston, and then my other semesters are online. My other time I'm in India, and then during summer I go to Boston.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, that's really cool. I think it's great that you've seen like so much of the world, even, as a student and just gotten to experience all those different cultures as you've furthered your education. You're still in school for this, but I'm just curious about the work experiences that you've had so far in music therapy. Like, are there specific challenges that you've faced as a therapist who's autistic and disabled yourself, or what's it been like so far?
Yeah, there were definitely challenges, and I am going to be very honest about it. And, I just can't hide it because I have to say that it is challenging. Like first time, like I was rejected for the music therapy major at Berklee, and the reasons they gave me was like lack of eye contact and lack of awareness. So basically, I felt like they're rejecting me for being autistic because these are literally my traits: lack of eye contact, lack of awareness. So the second time I made it, and mostly like the experience has been good so far, but there were some tensions as well, like because I noticed like how ableism also exists in this field, and like I wouldn't like say it like in full depth, but like many people in the field are all about like autism awareness, neurodiversity, and everything, mental health awareness, and all that, but would be always surprised if they come across a disabled person in their own field. That's something I've noticed a lot. And currently, like after you finish the program, you have to take a board certification exam where we both certified music therapist. And it's been like 4 years, and I've had trouble passing that exam because I've not received any proper support for passing. And like the exam is like all multiple choice, and I really struggle with it because they give you four options. Two are definitely wrong. One is possibly right, and the other is the right answer. So, choosing the right answer for me is always very hard. So, like, due to that, I didn't get a job in the US because I wasn't board certified. So I had to come back to India, and then there was one place like I used to stay in the city called Nasik earlier. So like there is a center called VXL. It's like so the main branch is in Chennai, which is in the south, and I worked at the Nasik branch, and I introduced like music therapy there with the clients and everything. For now, like, and I quit because I wanted to focus on my master's.
Yeah, it is because I would think that we really should have more representation among music therapists or therapists in general of people who are disabled themselves or are neurodivergent, because a lot of times those are the clients or the people that you're working with and supporting. So there's at least some more understanding. But yeah, it is kind of ironic or strange in a way that people are surprised that autistic and disabled people would want to be therapists. But I don't know. I think a lot of us kind of wind up developing a big interest in therapy because we want to figure out behavior, we want to figure out people. So I see it as a very natural thing. And then, of course, if you're a singer and a performer, that connection between music and therapy makes a lot of sense too. And you're also, well, you said you've been singing, well, probably singing even before you started talking. So it sounds like you've been a singer pretty much your whole life. So, like, what kind of music do you like to sing?
So a little bit about my music background. So I was like semi-trained in Hindustani music, or Indian, which is like an part of Indian classical music, and then there was Carnatic music, which is another Indian classical music. Like I tried to learn that from my mom. She was trained in that, but I left at as I wasn't into it. And when I was in KM Music Conservatory, A.R. Rahman's college, which I was speaking about earlier, like there they were teaching Western classical, and again I was not into it, and I was always into like contemporary music, and that's what I was like mainly trained in. So both Western and Indian contemporary, and those are the kind of songs that I'd like to sing. But basically, like mainly I sing whatever I'm in the mood for, just like how I listen to music. Like I just listen to whatever I'm in the mood for. Same with singing. Like I just sing what I feel like singing
Right. Well, that's really
at that
cool.
moment.
Yeah, and you have a Grammy nomination as well, which is amazing. So I know mentioned a little bit about it in your intro, but like tell me about how that came about, that opportunity.
Yeah, so I was part of the Berklee Indian Ensemble during my time at Berklee, and I worked with many popular artists from India, like Vijay Prakash, Shreya Ghoshal, Indian Ocean, and I learned so many pieces during my time with them, and so many originals as well. So together we recorded many songs, and that came out as an EP called Shurwat, and the album was nominated for the best world music album at the Grammys. So yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. That's great that you had opportunities to work with like really prominent Indian musical artists while you were at Berklee. So it sounds like that was a really great and expansive program to be in. You do advocacy on social media about autism and mental health in general. So, what inspired you to start advocating on social media about those issues?
When I went to Berklee, like there, I used to write articles about autism and mental health. There's this college-run blog called the Odyssey, so I used to write articles there. But that time my views were like really different then, because like even there I used to like think about lighted up blue and puzzle pieces and everything, which is not right, and which I find out many years later. And during the pandemic, I followed like a lot of neurodivergent accounts, met with so many neurodivergent people like me. And I think during that time, a lot of incidents happened also, like Sears Film Music, which had a huge controversy. There was the Yale study, the Walmart doll, and all that. So I understood so much about myself there, so much about autism. And I started unlearning everything, and I started coming to terms with my autism diagnosis. I was still surprised, that people still had this thinking of autism and mental health, and that we've only learned them through books and movies and not from lived experiences. So I felt it's important that I advocate through my lived experiences.
Yeah, I think I know I certainly did make connections with a lot of neurodivergent people during the pandemic on social media. And yeah, sometimes I forget that a lot of times if you're not learning from people who have those experiences themselves, you just have a very different view of autism and mental health. And at least in the United States, I think still it's really shaped by movies and, honestly, a lot of organizations and people who aren't autistic themselves. So yeah, there was a lot of unlearning for me to do as well. Yeah. How do you choose what kind of things to talk about on your social media?
What kind of things? Like again, like it's like is this something that I think randomly? I introspect a lot. I like always think so much, and when I think about something, I feel like I should share it. I mean, I feel it's important that people understand through my experience. So like it just happens out of the blue, and of course, like there are days there's like Autism Awareness Month. And then there's the neurodiversity week, and then we have national mental health month. So of course I try to post a lot there also, and even if not there, I would still post it.
And you also post a lot of videos of you like singing or dancing or both to different music that I guess, whatever moves you that day to dance to. I really think that that's a great expression, and I really like your singing and dancing too. So I like following for that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. So how can people like get in touch with you or follow you on social media if they want to learn more about the type of advocacy that you do?
So yeah, of course you can follow me on Instagram. It's at Swara Swami, and I post like my singing videos, dancing videos, like reels and some funny reels, and then I share about autism and mental health, my journey and everything. And I have a page on Facebook as well called Swara, but that's just for singing. So, and same with YouTube. I think it's at Single Swara, and yeah, where also I post my singing videos. So, and then when I was in the US, like I used to use TikTok a lot, but it's banned in India. So every time when I'm in the US, I use it, and even there I post a lot of content there, like so many singing, dancing videos, and even like videos on autism, mental health, like even some other topics like body shaming, which I went through a lot, and like you can still watch my videos there. Like it's at Swara Swami 93.
Okay, cool. I'll get your social media links and I'll put them in the show notes so that people can follow you from there. Well, Swara, thank you so much for talking to me today. As we close out, is there anything else that you'd like our listeners to know or anything that they can help or support you with?
Like one thing I want to say is that I have a speech that, like many autistics, we have a speech that is like blunt and straightforward, and but we all mean very well. So that's something like it's important that you all understand, and definitely like keep accepting us and for who we are.
Yeah, really important to keep in mind for everyone. Wonderful. Yeah, well, thank you, Swara. It was great talking with you, and thanks so much for being on my podcast.
Yeah, likewise.